Hello and welcome back to our Minimum Battles series, where we're playing with all 151 Pokemon from Generation 1 through Brock in Pokemon Yellow version, to see which Pokemon can actually beat the game on Minimum Battles. Now, this is just the first phase in the series. Of course, after we beat Brock, we're going to take the Pokemon that beat him and move on to Misty, and so on and so forth. But Brock is the first major challenge in the game. Now, why do we play Minimum Battles? Minimum Battles levels the playing field for all Pokemon. There's no grinding to get past challenges. You have to rely on superior strategy and movesets in order to move on. It makes better content. It gets rid of all this nonsense of grinding for 27 hours with your Abra just to be able to beat Brock. We're going to get through the game in a way that we can finally say, okay, these are the best Pokemon for a playthrough of Pokemon Yellow version. So far, we've tested over a third of all of the Pokemon in Generation 1, everything up to Arcanine. And fewer than half of all Pokemon have been able to make it through. Right? So, right now we're actually sitting at 26 that have made it through Brock on Minimum Battles. And they've done it in a variety of ways, but the key points seem to be having a special move that also is a damage-dealing move, and having a move that can do status as well as damage to Brock gives you a big advantage. Of course, having a super effective move can be very beneficial. A couple Pokemon that are interesting to note. Arbok got through Brock, even at a low level, by using wrap strategies, and that did prove effective. On the other hand, some Pokemon that seemed like they should be able to get through Brock were unable to do so because they had issues with their movesets. Nidoking was using Thrash, but would constantly hit itself in confusion, and we just couldn't get a lucky enough run to get through. So, today, let's move on to our next set of Pokemon. And today, I'm already playing the victory against the gym leader theme, because I'm quite convinced that a lot of these Pokemon are getting through. We've got the Poliwag line, which I think is going to be a cupcake, or a cakewalk. We've got the Abra line, which, of course, Abra won't be able to do it, but Kadabra Alakazam, I think they've got a good shot. The Machop line, come on. The Bellsprout line, we're going to get more opportunities at our wrap strategies when we get to the Tentacruel. And then I've decided to add one more set in today, which is the Geodude line. Just to add a little bit of a challenge, let's see if the Geodude line can get through Brock, given that they're going to not really have any advantages, but Graveler and Golem in particular are going to have pretty good stats, I think, that may make it possible. So, without further ado, let's turn off our gym leader victory music, and let's get to an actual challenge for today. So, moving on here, we have our very first Pokemon coming up, and this is going to be Poliwag. Now, for today's Pokemon, I have not really gone through and done any play testing with any of them in advance of today's challenge. I really wanted to come in and just see how they would perform. And I have a bias, of course, in today's challenge. I think that this is gonna be the game where we're actually able to get through with more than half of the Pokemon that we have in our list. But it's always interesting to find out what happens. So, as usual, we are playing in original fashion, where we use Ash and Gary every single time. But of course, you can name them whatever you like. And I never give nicknames to my Pokemon in these challenges because it's more important that we keep track of the Pokemon themselves, not really have to worry about names. So, let's start off with our Poliwag here. So, we can see that Poliwag has pretty good speed, and it starts with Bubble. That's going to be pretty good, because most likely Brock is not going to be a challenge at all with this Pokemon, though the rival may be. So, we already have to do our first reset based on that. So, let's try to get back and get our Poliwag again. That's one issue with Bubble, is that Bubble's not an incredibly strong move. It's gonna serve us well in this part, but of course Water Gun is a much better early game water move. Now, for what it's worth, these Pokemon are gonna be able to get Water Gun once we get to Mount Moon. And that didn't work out. Let's see if we can't get a little better luck here. I accidentally saved after I started the rival already, so we need him to not do any of this. So it all just comes down to whether or not he uses Tail Whip against us, basically. So that's fine. We've gotten through the rival, and next will be the Caterpie in Viridian Forest, which I'm not too worried about. Caterpie is not a Pokemon that we're too worried about because of the fact that A, it uses String Shot, and B, it's not a very strong Pokemon, so even when it does hit us, it's not going to do a ton of damage. But this is really the concern early on with some of these Pokemon in Oak's Lab against the rival, is just that Eevee always starts off with Stab with its Tackle, so its Tackle will always do a little bit more damage than normal. But on the flip side, even though we have a Stab move in Bubble, it's not a very strong Stab move, so Eevee can often end up taking us out. But with that being said, I think that, these first three Pokemon are going to be a pretty easy set of runs, because you have Stab against Brock. We've already seen it. Like, the whole Bubble was what allowed Squirtle to get through on his first attempt, if I recall correctly, against Brock. And then, of course, Wartortle and Blastoise were absolute cakewalks on that basis as well. So yeah, we're through the Bug Catcher, and I'm tempted to not even heal before going to Brock, because I think this is going to be an absolute cakewalk. So we're at level 8. I think we've got just fine stats for what we're going to do, which, okay, it's 2-hit KOs, but there you have it. Poliwag has no problems at all with beating Brock, on the basis of it's got a Stab move. I don't think that should be too crazy or interesting for anybody, but it is good to see that the game's working exactly as we would expect it to work, which is, hey, if you've got a water type move, a grass type move against Brock, you're gonna have a pretty easy playthrough, I think, in general. So let's just move on to Poliwhirl, which I expect to be a lot more of the same. Now, Poliwrath is going to be more interesting on the basis that it is a stone evolution, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get there, but basically the stone evolutions can start off with really interesting and weird movesets, so I'm not exactly sure what moves it's going to have. We can already see that Poliwhirl starts off with a much better moveset because it has Hypnosis, and it has Water Gun. And we're not really going to use Hypnosis against Brock, like that wouldn't make any sense, but we can use it here against the Eevee, just to try to make that a little more consistent by not being attacked as much. But Water Gun is also a significantly stronger move than Bubble, so I'm very confident that between higher stats and a better move, that Brock's probably just going to be a couple of one-hits with this Pokemon. I think the last Pokemon that we had that did have Water Gun right at the beginning of the game was Blastoise, and it was a cakewalk because of that move. But this will be very interesting going forward with a Pokemon like Poliwhirl, is the fact that it has Hypnosis in its moveset, and Sleep is so broken in Generation 1. Basically puts the opponent to sleep anywhere between 1 to 7 moves, but then they cannot attack us on the move that they wake up. So if we can outspeed the opponent, we can just kind of spam Sleep on them. And yeah, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but if we can do it consistently enough, we're going to end up in a situation where a lot of battles that would normally be, you know, on the cusp or kind of difficult, you know, if we just get good sleep luck like this, where the opponent is basically asleep for the entire battle, we don't really have to do too much to win, as long as we can do decent damage every other time. So again, we're back level 8 Poliwhirl. We're not even gonna, you know, heal up, and I expect that the battle goes something like that. 2 hits and we're through. So I think both of these Pokemon were pretty easy to expect, that this is exactly how it was gonna go with Poliwrath or Poliwag and Poliwhirl. We're on to Poliwrath, and the interesting thing to see here is gonna be whether or not Poliwrath gets any extra moves that make it even more powerful early on, or if it misses some moves that might have been useful. With these stone evolutions, like I said, their starting movesets can be really kind of random in a way. Like, I'm not always sure why they end up with the moveset that they do. Let's make sure that we've got our max DVs in. So, yeah. But, so, they can be incredibly broken in terms of starting off with a ton of super strong moves, or they can be incredibly broken in terms of starting off with out moves that would have been helpful. So, as we can see, we basically lost Bubble here, but we kept Hypnosis, which is going to be useful. We got Water Gun. Double Slap is kind of meh, but Body Slam is going to be a huge, huge attack here. In fact, we're just going to Body Slam Eevee down, because I think that's going to be the most consistent. And that bodes really well for Poliwrath going into Misty later on, is that, yeah, we're going to have water against water, but we're going to be able to put her Pokemon to sleep, and we're going to be able to use Body Slam and potentially paralyze her Pokemon, which is a pretty big deal, given that, you know, doing status to gym leaders, or to difficult trainers that you find along the way. So even if we run into, like, an Oddish, for example, that could do decent damage and heal up off of us and could wall some water types that only know water type moves, you got a move like Body Slam, you know, you probably just Body Slam that thing down and maybe take one hit, maybe paralyze it and avoid damage altogether. So a move like that is going to make this Pokemon a lot more consistent. Now keep in mind that Body Slam is a very powerful and useful move in this game, but even though it's available via TM8, that TM is locked behind a trainer that's an optional trainer in the SSN, and because of that, we're not going to be getting the Body Slam TM later in the game, which means that a lot of our Pokemon that could use that move and get an advantage with that move are not going to get it, and that could end up hurting some Pokemon's ability to get through the game on minimum battles. Anyway, so first 3 Pokemon are finished, and as we can see, the first 3 Pokemon, Poliwag, Poliwhirl, Poliwrath, all easily crush Brock. Not even a challenge, really. But such is the name of the game when you've got super effective moves and good movesets. So let's move on to the first Pokemon today that I think is not going to have any shot getting through Brock. And of course, that is going to be Abra. Now, Abra, for anybody who isn't familiar with at least this version of the game, basically starts with nothing in its moveset. It's going to start off only knowing Teleport. And I highly doubt that we're even going to be able to get through the rival. And of course, if we can't beat him, there's no way. You know, we're not going to get through Caterpie either. Struggling, I don't think. So even if we have the best Abra in the world, it only knows Teleport, and we're just going to get easily knocked out by the rival. There. So yeah, theoretically we can continue, right? There's nothing stopping us from continuing and running away from trainer battles or from wild Pokemon battles with Teleport. But if we can't even get through the bug catcher in Viridian Forest, I think we're going to see pretty quickly that this run is over. I think that's fair, though. Who knows, maybe we get stupid lucky and we somehow use up all of our PP and we still manage to struggle down the bug catcher in Viridian Forest with the level 5 Abra, but I'm not holding my breath. In fact, I would bet that probably Abra needs to be at least... Yeah, I mean... Because Abra doesn't learn any moves. It can learn TM moves, but it doesn't have any level up moveset. If I recall correctly, it basically just relies on getting... Later it can get TM moves, but for now it's really just reliant on getting a high enough level and being able to struggle things down. So theoretically we can sit here and we can use up all of our teleports, and we can go into the bug catcher and try to use struggle in order to get away. I'm just allowing teleport since it does no damage. It's the same as running away from battle. But here, I mean, we're not allowed to use items in battle, so we can give this a shot, but I'm not too confident. So here we go, and there's one down. Let's try another one really quickly just to see, and see that doesn't work. I'm not sure even if it uses String Shot every single turn if we have any shot against this. That was pretty close, so we definitely need for Caterpie to basically not attack us, just to use String Shot over and over again. See, that one didn't work. So, yeah. We'll give him one more attempt. Oops. That's a wild Caterpie, sorry. And see, I think right there we can pretty much say that Abra has no shot, because even if we get through that Caterpie, we're gonna have to heal up with potions, go into Brock, and try to beat Brock without gaining any levels, and we're not going to do any damage to his Pokemon, basically. So that one, I think, is already just, you know, it's impossible. So we're not going to waste our time playing more and more. We've already seen Abra. It just doesn't have any moves, you know, so that is what it is. But let's try a Pokemon that I think is now going to flip the script, which is going to be our Kadabra. And I'm not sure, but I think Kadabra starts with Confusion and Kinesis in this version, if I recall correctly. And if it has Confusion, then that's already just GG, you know. Brock has no chance, because it's a special type move. And as we've seen, Brock really struggles against special type moves, so... Ooh, actually, this is going to be a heck of a lot more interesting than I thought, because it looks like we start out with Kinesis and Teleport. And not Confusion. What the heck is this? So... how do we try to get through with Kadabra, then? Because we're going to have to use Kinesis a bunch of times. Obviously. Like, we're going to have to use Kinesis so that we can lower accuracy of our opponents. And then we're going to have to struggle again. The only advantage we're going to have, really, is that we have more HP. This is rather... terrible. And I say as I realize that my Abra sprite is still over here, so we need to delete Abra here. So Abra's done, but Kadabra might not be able to do this. What? I'm in a bit of shock right now, because I was certain that Kadabra was going to start with Confusion, but then again, it might be that it only learns Confusion at level 16. Like, I know it learns Confusion the moment that it evolves from Abra. And again, this is a Pokemon that can learn TM moves, so that's good, but if it only knows Kinesis, that could be very, very terrible. Because we basically have to just use Kinesis and then struggle to try to get through. So we're basically relying on Sand Attack and struggle, which we've already seen with some Pokemon like Sandshrew, Sandslash, Pidgey, that Sand Attack in and of itself was not enough. And those Pokemon did not have to use Struggle in order to do damage, so this is going to be very interesting. We're going to save. We're going to start by using Kinesis, and we basically have to get 15 Kinesises off without dying, and then we have to struggle. Fortunately, 15 PP goes pretty quickly, but here we just don't have enough HP left to be able to do anything. So, like, we really basically need to not get hit, too, in order to have any shot. So, yeah, I mean, if he hits us even a couple times, we're basically done. Like, we could try to use up all of our Kinesis PP against wild Pokemon, but that kind of goes against the spirit. Teleport's fine because we're planning to run away from those Pokemon anyway, so using Teleport I think is fair because we're not actually using any move that affects the opponent. We're just running away from battle, basically. It would be the same for like a Pokemon that knows Whirlwind or knows Roar. It's just a run away from battle move, so but I think that we would need full HP to have any shot of struggling this Caterpie down. You know, the Abra line does not have great HP, so... Oh, this is bad. You know, like, we can struggle, but we just run out of HP before we get through. That is terrible. I was so convinced that Kadabra was going to be able to get through, but I think, guys, we have to say that Kadabra is also out. It doesn't have any moves that it can use to get through. Kinesis and Struggle is not going to be a winning combination, I think. So, without further ado, let's move on to our next Pokemon, Alakazam. And that Kadabra run has me really nervous, because I was pretty convinced that we were going to be 5 of 6 here. And that then with Bellsprout and the Machop line, we were basically going to win with everything except Abra up to this point. I did not realize that we were up against such a bad moveset for Kadabra. I was convinced it was going to have confusion and it was just going to be able to steamroll through. That's pretty crazy, to say the least. Let's find out if Alakazam actually has a damage-dealing move. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Alakazam does not have a damage-dealing move, and it's got the same HP as Kadabra before. Oh, this is terrible. This is absolutely nonsense. So, are we gonna be without, like, arguably the strongest non-legendary Pokemon in the game? Alakazam is so powerful, but if it can't do damage... What? Oh my gosh. This is terrible. I'm really in shock. I cannot believe that we have, like, one of the strongest Pokemon in the game, and we have no moveset. Like, literally no moveset to use against any of these Pokemon. Like, how is this possible? This game is so broken. Oh my god. I'm in a bit of shock right now because, like, this was supposed to be just a bunch of cakewalk, easy runs. And are we gonna be able to beat Caterpie with this? Like, think how embarrassing that will be when we're not able to beat Caterpie with an Alakazam. Like, what? And I'm not sure, but it could be that it's Yellow version, and that Yellow version has a different starting moveset for these Pokemon than we would have gotten if we were playing Red and Blue. I'm pretty sure in Red and Blue they start out with Confusion, the evolved forms. So, yeah, I mean, here we're just stuck again. Same thing, basically. We have to get off 15 Kinesis against Caterpie. And then we have to start struggling and hope that we can take it out. Okay, we got through Caterpie. And now, I think that we need Kinesis against Geodude to stand any shot whatsoever. So I think that we need to use up all our teleports. Like, we basically need to use up teleport, but we need to have Kinesis, because that's the only way that I can see us having any shot once we get into Brock. We basically have to lower his accuracy, and then pray that he doesn't hit us, critical hit us, anything. Because, I mean, Alakazam is a glass cannon. It can't take a lot of damage. It needs, you know, to basically defend, but okay, so we've used up all of our teleports, so now it is time to go to Brock. Now keep in mind, if we were able to just sit here and use items, like we could just sit here and heal up with potions, and this might just be possible. Like, we're using struggle, but we might be able to just heal up and win. But here against Brock, with an Alakazam that has no moveset other than to basically spam Sand Attack. That's the equivalent of what we're doing here. And as we can see, Geodude, like 3 hits takes us out. So we really need to lower its accuracy right away. And then 25 HP, probably, even if we get through, Geodude somehow isn't going to be enough to also struggle down the Onix. Like, there's no way. First we have to get there. First we have to get to where we can use struggle. But as we can see, like, it hits us 3 times and we're done. So we would need already, like, god tier luck in order to get through this, because we basically need him to miss every single attack to give us any shot whatsoever. Folks, I think that's it. I think that we have to eliminate Alakazam from this challenge. And that's shocking that Alakazam cannot get through Brock because it doesn't start off with confusion. I was absolutely convinced it's going to have confusion here. And probably in red and blue, it probably does have confusion. I'm going to have to double check that. So that kind of surprised me there. I think that we're going to have to look at that in red and blue at a later date. But for now, for today's challenge, the Abra line, the entire Abra line, fails to beat Brock in minimum battles. Let's get this challenge back on track now. We're going to have Bellsprout. Bellsprout, if I recall correctly, should start with Vine Whip. If it doesn't start with Vine Whip, I'm going to be really shocked here. And Vine Whip is, of course, going to be a move that I expect to absolutely crush Brock. Like, the challenge with this Pokemon is actually going to be the Bug Catcher in Viridian Forest, because that's going to be the Pokemon that will resist our attacks. Provided we can get through that Caterpie that's at level 10, we should have a pretty good time. So let's just double check. Yep, we start off with Vine Whip and Growth, and that will probably be our strategy against the Caterpie, to use Growth. Okay, so we lost there. We tried using Growth twice, so if we can manage to get our growths off, I think we can just, yeah. easy peasy. It's just a matter of getting our setup off. And that's what we're going to have to do against the Caterpie, given that our only move is Vine Whip. Growth is an awesome move, given that it increases our special every turn, so between that and the Caterpie likely using some string shots, which probably aren't going to be actually all that useful, that's really going to be the strat here, is just raise our stats. Growth is going to be awesome with this Pokemon as we move on through the game, of course, because we're going to get badge boosts off of that. Anybody who knows the badge boost glitch, it's, I think, pretty famous for these red, blue, yellow challenges now. Because there's no way to avoid it anytime that you change your stats. A stat altering move, whether it's you're using growth on your Pokemon or the opponent uses Leer on you. 4 of the badges basically give you stat boosts, starting with Brock. Brock's badge gives you an increase in attack, and then later on we get badge boosts for speed, defense, and special. It's basically the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th gym leaders that give you those badge boosts. But then they enable you to basically raise your stats every time that you use a status or a stat altering move. So you would use growth, for example, to increase your special, but if you have a badge boost in attack, you would also get a 12.5% increase in attack, which could be pretty good. So here, this isn't badge boost glitch. This is just increasing the stats of our Bellsprout so that it can easily take out the Caterpie, on the basis that our special is just so high at that point that we can just take it out. In any Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow playthrough, badge boost glitch is just part of the game. It's a game mechanic at this point. It's not a cheat, really. I wouldn't even say it's a glitch. Like, I think it was probably JRose11 who started calling it the badge boost glitch, but that's not really a correct statement, I feel, because a glitch implies that something, destructive kind of happens in the game. Like you glitch through walls, for example, right? But the badge boost was always intended to be part of the game. And the fact that the developers did not change this behavior, really, I mean, at that point, is it a glitch or is it a feature? Come on, guys. As far as I'm concerned, it's the badge boost effect, I think, is a much better statement. Because, like, you can get a move like Haze that completely removes the badge boost. You can get, of course, stat debuffs that also change the badge boosts. And I would argue that the developers of this game were probably thinking that a lot of little kids were going to play this game. And they may have intentionally made it so that debuffs would raise your other stats, on the basis that if you just had your debuffs hit you, you might become too weak and not be able to actually win the game. I think there's probably a lot of things going on here where they expected that little kids might struggle with parts of the game, and that as a way to offset that, hey, let's give them a little bit of a boost here. So in situations where they get Leer, for example, yeah, the Leer works as expected, it lowers their defense, but their other stats like speed go up so that they have a higher chance of hitting first and maybe being able to take out the opponent that way. So I refuse to call it a badge boost glitch. It's a badge boost mechanic, it's a badge boost feature, something like that. Anyway, here we are with our Weepinbell, which has the same moves as Bellsprout, but it additionally starts with Wrap. And Wrap is definitely going to help us out here, I think, against the Caterpie. It's just another way to take it out, basically, because Wrap is so broken in this game where opponents cannot move while in a Wrap. Wrap, Bind, Clamp, and Fire Spin are these moves that basically trap the opponent for multiple turns. I'd say all of them give a Pokemon at least a decent chance against Brock, on the basis that you can just basically lock his Pokemon into not being able to attack. Here I just went for Growth and Vine Whip, because why not? It's a reasonably strong way to get through. And we're just going to heal up, because we saw a little bit in the Bellsprout run that Brock's Onix does no bind, so it basically can just lock us in for a while. But I think that this is going to be just fine to just Vine Whip and Vine Whip. Boom, done. Easy, piece of cake. And this is kind of how I expected the runs to go today, was, okay, yeah, we're just going to take all these Pokemon that have special moves and we're just going to crush Brock. It worked with the Poliwag line, it failed with the Abra line, and now we're back to kind of where I expected us to be with the Bellsprout line. That these Pokemon, just for what it's worth, they're never going to struggle in the early game. Grass type was kind of made to be the cheat code early on in these red, blue, yellow versions, because grass just is good against everything in the early game. You have no struggles against Brock if you have a grass move. You, again, have no struggles against Misty, because Misty's just stuck using normal type attacks against you, which are basically tackle with her Pokemon. Lieutenant Surge can't do very good damage against you. I mean, he's just getting neutral damage when he hits you, or with normal type attacks, and you're resisting his electric type moves. Here we can see that we do not get growth with Victreebel, but we do start out with Sleep Powder, Stun Spore, Acid, and Razor Leaf, which Razor Leaf is going to be incredibly strong, given that it's basically a guaranteed critical hit, though not getting growth could be bad in some parts of the game, because like the under-evolved forms, the Weepinbell and Bellsprout, they're going to get Razor Leaf at some point too, via level up, but the fact that they're going to be able to take advantage of badge boosts could end up being the difference between getting through some battles and not getting through some battles. But anyway, I digress. When we're talking about grass types, I mean, really the first gym leader they get to that they're not great against is, of course, Erica. But typically by the time you got to Erica in the normal playthrough, you would already have a team of Pokemon that would enable you to do something at that point. Erica was always a little bit challenging in the sense that you really want like a fire type Pokemon or an ice type Pokemon in order to take Erica out, but actually those Pokemon aren't available when you first get to Cerulean City, or sorry, Celadon City, or rather you would have to get them for the first time. Like, you could always get the Eevee and evolve it into Flareon, was always one legitimate strategy, but Flareon then wouldn't immediately have a fire-type move, actually. It would start off with something like, I don't know, Tackle, Sand Attack, maybe Quick Attack. The other option was to catch an Abra and train it up, or catch a Drowsy and train it up so that they would learn some Psychic-type moves. So really the best Pokemon that you would likely have without adding anything or training something up would be Pokemon like Butterfree, which Butterfree absolutely crushes there. But anyway, so we can see that true to form, the Bellsprout line had 0 issues with Brock. Now we're moving on to the Machop line. And Machop's going to be interesting because just Machop, I believe, is only going to start off with Karate Chop, which is good in the sense that it's a high critical hit ratio move. Like, it's basically guaranteed to get a critical hit. The downside is I don't think that Machop starts out with anything that really lets it do any status debuffs or anything like that against Brock, and it's probably not going to have a great level when it gets there, but I'm not sure exactly which level of group it's in. We'll see as we go through here. But because of those two factors, I'm not super confident. If it started off with a low kick, I would have a lot more confidence in it. But as we can see, it's just Karate Chop. The critical hits will get us through the rival battle, no issue. But it comes down to how much damage are we doing against the Geodude. Keep in mind that Karate Chop in this generation is a normal type move, and I've lamented it before when talking about Mankey and Primeape, that it just makes no sense, and it seems like probably the developers at this point weren't really thinking through some of the decisions that they made. The fact that moves like Karate Chop and Comet Punch are normal type moves as opposed to fighting type moves, for example. Of course, it comes up in later generations that, in these early generations, the type of a move determined whether it was physical or special. Basically, all fighting moves are going to be physical, all psychic moves are going to be special. There is no middle ground there, and so sometimes you'll get a Pokemon that has a moveset that just makes no sense. For example, when you start off with Vulpix, it knows Tail Whip and Ember, and those two moves have no synergy whatsoever. Because you're not gonna, get any benefit from Tail Whip when you're attacking with Ember. You're lowering its defense, but then you're using a special type attack. So you get some weird quirks like that in Generation 1. As I've talked about before, Ghost. The only attacking move that Ghosts get is Lick, which does, nothing. Though it can paralyze Brock, so it may be useful when we get to the Ghastly line. But this is a normal type Karate Chop. It really should be a fighting type, but we're constrained by the way the game was made. So let's see, with Karate Chop, are we going to be able to get through Brock? And definitely I think part of it comes down to critical hits, how many critical hits we can get. But we can see that we just didn't do quite enough damage there to get through. Looks like he does about 5 damage to us every turn, so it could also be a matter of getting misses from the Geodude in order to make it doable. Like, we need a critical hit basically every single time, and we might need a couple misses from him. But as we can see, if Karate Chop were a fighting type move, this would be a piece of cake, but the fact that Karate Chop is a normal type move, it's resisted by the Geodude, we just can't get through. We don't do enough damage, and we don't have a whole lot of PP, so at some point we're going to be struggling against the Onix anyway, because I doubt we're going to get through the Geodude with enough PP left over to also take out the Onix. And Onix, what is it going to do? It's going to use Tackle, Bind, or Bide 3/4 of the time, and it's only going to use Screech 1/4 of the time. And we'd really need it to just use Screech against us over and over and over again. So on that basis, I think that we're going to have to go ahead and say that Machop is out. Machop just can't quite do it. I'm not super surprised by that, given, like I said, the typing of its move, even though I think that typing is kind of ridiculous and shows just how little thought went into some parts of these early games. But that being the case, we can move on now to Machoke, and Machoke hopefully will start off with a better moveset, but even if it doesn't, even if it has the exact same moveset, it's going to have better stats to go with it, and particularly if its attacking stats are higher, it's going to have a chance to do more damage against the gym leaders, and thus maybe it has a good shot. Honestly, when I was young, psychic moves were so powerful in Generation 1 that pretty much the fighting type I always thought was just terrible. But here we have a legitimate chance, I think. We've got Low Kick, which is going to be a huge advantage against Brock. Like, we can see, of course, Eevee being a normal type Pokemon, we can just hit it with Low Kick and it's a one-shot. I believe we saw the same thing with Primate when we went through. That high attack stat plus a fighting type move, you know, as I said, when I had Mankey, I has Low Kick, and it was an easy sweep through Brock, and it's probably the same here. We have Leer as well, so we have a way of lowering the opponent's stats. And this is another Pokemon that honestly can go quite far, I think, because with Karate Chop and its high damage output, and given that it can have a move like Low Kick that can just do, you know, super effective damage against a lot of Pokemon, or at least neutral stab damage against a lot of Pokemon. And given that this Pokemon's going to be able to learn a pretty decent moveset, I mean, later on in the game it's going to get access to some stronger normal type moves. Submission is not great, but it will be a move that we can use, at least against opponents, in order to do some damage. Like Seismic Toss, when we can get that TM, is also going to be pretty huge, given that at least we'll be able to do damage equal to our level against our opponents. And I believe it's going to learn attacks like Dig and yeah, it's, I think, got a pretty reasonable shot here. Here it looks like the Onix was a 3-hit, but still nothing to be too worried about, given that it is a fighting type move. So there we go. We've gotten through with another Pokemon, the Machoke. Machop wasn't able to do it just because it only started off with Karate Chop. It wasn't doing enough damage, even with critical hits, to get through the Geodude. But Machoke, starting off with Low Kick, just got a huge advantage there. versus the Machop. Now, Machamp is probably going to be a repeat of the same thing, right? I mean, it's a trade evolution, but it looks like the trade evolutions typically start with the same moveset as their lesser evolutions. Because trade evolutions, unlike stone evolutions, right, they're basically the same Pokemon as the second stage evolution. They're basically, you know, Kadabra and Alakazam are identical, basically. Of course, not stat-wise, but what I mean is that you can get a Kadabra of any level and immediately turn it into an Alakazam by just trading it. Same for Graveler. You can get a Graveler at any level and immediately turn it into a Golem just by trading it. So I think the logic was that because Machoke can be traded at any time and thus just become Machamp, they should have the same moveset, basically, and the same level up moveset, because for all intents and purposes, the Machamp is just a buffed Machoke, basically. Whereas when we talk about the stone evolutions, those Pokemon never have to evolve, right? They literally never have to evolve, because the only way to evolve them is to apply a stone, and the stone can be given at basically any level, but the mechanics of stone evolutions has been, at least in Generation 1, that after you evolve with the stone, you basically stop learning moves. So when you take your Staryu and you give it a Water Stone to evolve it to Starmie, from that point on, it basically has no learn set. So you're incentivized to put off using stones as long as possible in order to allow your Pokemon to learn its level up moves. And stones, I think, were always really thought of as like more of a late game mechanic in order to try to boost the power or boost the moveset late in the game. Whereas Machoke, like, the second you get a Machoke, find a friend and trade it. That was I think, the intended mechanic of the developers. Anyway, so that's why I think Stone Evolution Pokemon have typically different movesets than their previous evolutions, whereas Pokemon like Gengar, like Golem, like Machamp, Alakazam are basically just going to start with the same moves as their less evolved forms, because literally you can just trade them, and it just basically it's just saying that trading gives them a stats buff, basically, and perhaps opens up a couple extra moves for them, but otherwise doesn't really change anything. So okay, we've gotten through with Machamp, Machoke, the Bellsprout line, and the Poliwag line. Failed miserably with the Abra line. Now we're on to Tentacool and Tentacruel, and I need to see here with Tentacool what its moveset is. If we have Wrap, then we have a strategy to try, basically. Let's see here what just happened. Reset. Oh, this one I must have tried a playtest before, though I do not remember doing that. But this one will be interesting, because if we start off with Wrap, I think there's at least a chance. And that's all we can ask for with Pokemon here, is to have a chance, to have a strategy that makes some logical sense. And what the heck just happened here? Oh, we went there without going out and catching our Pokemon. That would make sense. So let's get ourselves a Tentacool. Let's see what our moveset is on this Tentacool. We do not start off with Wrap, we start off with Acid. I forgot about that. For some reason I thought we started with Wrap. Acid could be interesting, because we do have some potential to, if I recall correctly, lower defense. I'm not sure if Acid has a chance to poison, but it is a stab move, and it is something that could possibly get us through. So it's probably Tentacruel that's going to start off with Wrap, which will be, I think, a bit more interesting. Okay. There we go. Sometimes playing on the emulator is terrible, and you see a lot of speedrunners where they show that they get better times playing on normal speed than sped up like this, because it can be really hard to get the key touches just right to move only one spot on the screen, for example. You end up with a lot more cases where you have to bump into things in order to make sure that your routing is good. Or you have to do these really light touches in order to get exactly where you want to be. So definitely, if we were just going for speed, like best game time, the only way to do a best game time run is to play on normal speed, not sped up at all, because then you have basically zero chance of bumping into things as long as you're paying attention. Now that seems to be another problem with a lot of Pokemon YouTubers, even these people who are checking times. I see this all the time in their videos, that they're timing their runs, but then they're playing on, 4 times speed or something and bumping into things constantly. And, oh yeah, at this point I lost focus and I just, kind of did this or that or the other thing. Which was never really my cup of tea. I always thought, look, if you're gonna play the game, don't goof off, and especially if you're making content, why would you be kind of messing around at the same time, Oh, sorry, I was watching TV while I was doing this, so I didn't realize that I'd just been pressing A for the last 15 minutes. Anyway. Tentacool, with only Acid, we've seen the damage that it was doing. We even saw a couple times where it lowered defense. The Geodude just does too much damage. And with Geodude doing that much damage, we're just not going to be able to get through. So, this is a case where, again, I think we have to say, Tentacool, you are out of there. Now, that's not so bad. So far, we've got a pretty good set of Pokemon going through. We've got 8 Pokemon that have gotten through so far, out of, 13 Pokemon. This is possibly the first time since the first episode where we're actually going to get through Brock with more than half of the Pokemon that were available to us. But we really have to see now the performance of Tentacruel and then the Geodude line. Geodude itself I'm not going to be too confident in, but the evolutions I think will possibly give us some interesting opportunities against Brock. But Tentacruel's really going to come down to its moveset. We'll expect now that it should start with Acid, but what other moves is it going to start with? Because those are really going to be the deciding factor. Clearly, Acid's not strong enough to get through Brock. It's good against the rival, it's good against the bug catcher, but it's just not anything to look forward to with Brock. But here we get Supersonic and we get Wrap. And now suddenly this looks like a moveset that we may actually be able to do some reasonable damage with. The bug catcher and the rival are basically going to be unchanged. We just want to go through with Acid on both of those, I think. Of course, the problem with Wrap is that it doesn't do a lot of damage, and because it doesn't do a lot of damage, we can end up in cases where, like, yeah, sure, we got Wrap off, sure, we're trapping the enemy, but we don't do enough damage to actually make it worth anything. But this is where Acid having a chance to lower defense could even come into play. Maybe it's a situation where we need to get 1 or 2 defense drops. And then after we get those defense drops, we can use Wrap more effectively, for example. And Supersonic from the beginning, if we can get it off on turn 1, may allow us to also use Confusion to our advantage against the Geodude, to get it to waste turns by hitting itself in Confusion. We saw that Confusion against us when we used Nidoking was enough to basically make the run impossible, without a stupid amount of luck, basically. Like, we'd never hit ourselves in Confusion and get good ranges against the opponents, so it just wasn't possible. But anyway, so Confusion could be another factor. Confusion, keep in mind, is very useful in this generation because Brock uses full heals when you status him, but he can't use full heal to stop Confusion, so it's probably one of the best status moves to use against him, if it can connect. Here we can see using Wrap. It's pretty good. We are getting through slowly but surely. Okay, we're through Geodude. Now we've confused Onix. We're just gonna keep trying to confuse Onix. And now we're just gonna try to use Wrap on him in order to take him down. And there we go. No problem. Even going in at level 6, even being in a pretty slow level up group, you know, finishing at only level 8, Wrap was the strat, and Wrap got us through. So Tentacruel is through. Now I think we've guaranteed that this is gonna be a pretty successful set, right? We've got 9 Pokemon already through Brock out of today's challengers, so pretty good. Last week I said that we would finish right here on Tentacruel, but then I saw that the next Pokemon was Geodude, and I really want to try this run today, because first off, I thought a lot of these Pokemon were going to be cakewalks. Now, it turns out that the Abra line, which I thought was going to be a piece of cake, turned out not to be. Like, to be perfectly honest, going into this today, I expected that Abra wouldn't be able to get through. I thought maybe Machop and maybe Tentacool wouldn't be able to get through, but I actually expected all the rest of these Pokemon to succeed. So the fact that we've been this unsuccessful dampens my hopes a little bit, because basically I was hoping that we would be able to get through Brock with about 50% of the Pokemon in this generation. And being perfectly honest, I mean, Red and Blue is a lot easier because of the fact that Brock's Geodude can just sit there and use Defense Curl over and over and over again. As opposed to Pokemon Yellow, where he never uses Defense Curl, he just uses Tackle every single turn. It really sets up a different dynamic whereby, you know, we would just need to get insane luck with misses or what have you, critical hits, misses, etc. in order to get through with a lot of Pokemon. So Brock is a lot tougher here in the early game in Yellow. I would guess that in Pokemon Red and Blue, probably about 50% of Pokemon could make it through Brock on minimum battles, but here I think it's going to be closer to maybe 40%, or maybe lower than that. But ideally, my hope in this game is that we go through Brock and we get through with about 40%, maybe we knock off another 5 to 10% when it comes to getting through Lieutenant Surge and Misty. So now we're maybe at 30 to 35%, and then we get to the middle game and we really get to test those Pokemon out. I would expect there that we lose another, maybe 10 to 15%. So we're probably looking at maybe 20% getting to the end game, and then we really get to have a lot of fun and challenge tweaking movesets and trying to get through the Elite Four and the final rival. Because that's where, when we get late in the game, is where strategy is going to be really important, and movesets are going to be incredibly important to optimize. Whereas here against Brock, there are no items, there's no TMs, there's nothing that we can do other than just rely on our movesets and try to get through. So probably he's going to eliminate the highest percentage of Pokemon, I think, in a challenge like this. Anyway, looking right here, we have a Geodude at level 8 versus a level 10 Geodude. Now, the advantage that we have is that we've guaranteed that our Geodude has perfect DVs. That's just to put all Pokemon on a level playing field. His Geodude does not necessarily have that benefit. And now we can see that we're basically just sitting here doing even damage with each other. It looks like we do outspeed his Geodude, which is likely just thanks to our higher DVs than him. So even though we're a couple levels lower, we have overall better stats. But that right there is a win. We just took out a Geodude that's 2 levels higher. Now the problem is that against Onix, we don't have any option of what to do. We just have to keep spamming Tackle. So I'm not super convinced that we're going to be able to get through on that basis, but at least we get a moral victory in saying that we were able to beat Geodude that's 2 levels higher than our Geodude. And it looks like this is going to be pretty consistent. So, I mean, of course, assuming that we don't miss a bunch of times or something. So, yeah. Getting through to Onix is not an issue. The issue is that we run out of HP when we're fighting against the Onix. So, Geodude, we're going to go ahead and say this is not possible. I think it's pretty reasonable to say that. Again, any Pokemon, if you played millions upon millions of times, probably would have 1 or 2 runs where they get through, but that's not what we're really after here. We're looking for what a reasonable human being could do. I did always love the videos by Picaspre where he would show like how to get through situations that look like they're soft locks in the game, but he can do something. He can use some, Gen 1 miss or something in order to get out of an apparent soft lock in the game. But, I mean, that guy has said plenty of times, like, yeah, you could do this, and it's theoretically possible, but by the time that you were actually able to do it in the game, like, you would have been better off just resetting and replaying the game up to that point. because it's so unlikely to work. Here, okay, our Graveler has Defense Curl, and this could be pretty good in the sense that Defense Curl will enable us to do something when Onix uses Bide. I don't think that it will really affect anything against the Geodude, given that it's already doing like 1 damage. But when we get to Onix, we'll have the ability to use Defense Curl to basically waste some turns while it uses Bide and not have to just sit there and keep attacking it, which was the case with Geodude. That being said, I'm a little apprehensive because it seems likely to me that we're going to run out of PP on Tackle, and not having enough PP is a big issue. I think everybody knows that, but it's especially a big issue when you're up against an opponent who has unlimited PP. So we can talk about PP problems all day. But at least Defense Curl is going to give us something else to do in that case. So I'm just not convinced that this is necessarily going to go through. It depends. If we seem like we're doing more damage to Geodude than it's doing to us, then I think this is possible. If it seems like we're doing the exact same damage as Geodude, then I think this is going to be impossible. So let's go ahead and give it a try. I expect Caterpie to be a piece of cake because it really can't do anything to us. It's just hitting with Tackle and doing 1 damage. So is our Graveler good enough to do like 2 damage to the Geodude, which could get us through with a lot more health, get us through a lot quicker, and give us a chance against the Onix? Let's find out. So it looks like we're still doing like 1 damage every turn, but because we have more health, we are getting a pretty sizable health advantage on it. So we're gonna get through in maybe orange or early red health, as opposed to like all the way down at 1 HP, which is pretty good. But we really need this Geodude to just go down. Okay, so we're through. We have 11 HP to use here. Okay, and definitely we just use Defense Curl, but it is a pretty big deal that it outspeeds us. So that one did not work. Let's try another attempt here. So really like some critical hits or something would be pretty nice here. Right now Geodude's keeping up with us pretty well because it's getting crits, which is not great. We really want to be getting crits against it and getting through with as much HP as possible. Okay, there we're through. And see, there again, we just weren't able to do enough damage. Let's take one last attempt here. Let's see if we can get some better ranges against the Geodude. Maybe get through with more HP. It's possible that that first Geodude just had especially low defense or low HP for a Geodude. Because we seem to not be getting quite as much of a health lead on this one. Still doing 1 damage per attack, but yeah, it's not as good as the one before. But we are through. And that's one of the issues here, is that this Onix knows Bind, and the fact that it can use Bind and we're outsped really adversely affected us. So here, unfortunately, I think we have to say that Graveler is out. Just doesn't do enough damage. It doesn't have a moveset that really works here. That's pretty much it. Now Golem is going to be our last Pokemon for today. Golem, of course, is kind of the ultimate, like, just defensive rock Pokemon early on in the game. When I used to play the game, I always used to level up way more than I probably should have as a kid, so I would always have a Golem by the time I got to Misty, actually. I had 2 Game Boys, so I would basically catch the Pokemon on either version and then just trade them back and forth in order to get the trade evolutions, as well as to get any Pokemon that weren't available in either version of the game. So I always had like 2 games going that had every possible Pokemon up to that point. Like, I was a bit obsessive about the whole collect them all thing, so, you know, the fact that you could just get up to level 25 in Mount Moon and then, you know, trade and evolve to Golem, and you've suddenly got this really powerful rock Pokemon. Of course, it was always one of my go-to Pokemon when I got to Lieutenant Surge. I would always have Golem and I would have Dugtrio, and it's between those two, you'd never have an issue against the Pokemon there. So anyway, Golem, it's got better stats, of course, than Graveler and Geodude. That's really its big bonus. It's a fairly fast rock type overall, but like it's faster than Rhydon, for example, but really it's about bulk and HP and decent attack. But this is a Pokemon that, if it can get through Brock, has some potential to do some damage later on in the game. It gets a pretty good moveset, learns Rock Slide, learns Earthquake, learns Fire Blast if we want to use that to try to get through some grass or ice types later on. It can learn that move. And then moves like Defense Curl will enable it to Badge Boost later on in the game, if that's something that we want to do. Of course, in competitive Pokemon, this would be a Pokemon that you'd want to get Explosion on and have the ability to take out an opponent, which definitely in the RBY metagame was pretty valuable, to have Exploders that could just take out opponents. So Pokemon like Executor, Gengar, Cloyster, just these Pokemon that could explode when they had a situation, especially if you could get paralysis off on a really strong Pokemon. You know, suddenly you're exploding on Alakazam and just taking out one hit with your Golem, and now your Alakazam is still available later on to, you know, sweep. Was a pretty good strategy. So anyway, we're not going to be able to use any of that, of course, because Explosion just means that we lose in this challenge. So here, let's go ahead and start trying to take out this Geodude, which does seem to be going a whole lot better than the last runs with Graveler. We're getting through with a lot more HP, 26 HP, and we level up, so now we've got 29 HP. And here, we're just going to raise our defense. We really don't like that bind, given that it gives it multiple turns to hit us, and we can't move. Now it's just using bide over and over again. Seems like every time that we use Tackle, it uses Bide. Oh, that's terrible. Okay, so we got through the Geodude, no problem. And then we kind of had terrible luck with our opponent just using Bide over and over again. But here, we're getting some critical hits. If we can keep this up, we can get through on decent health. There we go, we're through on 27 HP this time, so... Here, he's not doing a ton of damage to us. Like, we really want to see Tackle. Tackle's a great move to see from him because it does like 1 damage. Bind is much worse. Screech is not the end of the world, given as it doesn't do any damage and we have the ability to just raise our defense again. But here on 1 HP, I'm not too confident. Yeah, that one didn't go. This one's going to be a tough out, no matter what we do. But the more HP we can get to Onix with, the better. Of course, so we want crits as much as possible against Geodude. Okay, we're through on 28 HP this time. Okay. Like, one of the issues is that we don't know exactly how many moves Bide is going to last. But it's actually Bind that we want to see less than Bide. So we got it down to about half health there. This is one that we really are going to need some decent luck as well as crits at good times, but we really don't want to see Bide or Bind very much. We prefer to see Screech and Tackle as much as possible from the Onix. Tackle because it doesn't do much damage, Screech because even after it hits us with Screech, we have the ability to just go back and raise our defense again. So I mean, we're already dead at that point, but this is a pretty tough fight, all said, but I want to give it its full opportunities, given that Golem, I think, has a legitimate shot here if it can just get the right kind of luck. It would be so much better if we outsped here, because then we would be able to just, you know, take advantage of the bind by not doing a damage dealing move every time that it went for Bide. As it stands, we take like 2 damage every time that it uses Bide because we hit it once and then it comes back and hits us for double. So we're doing like 1 damage to it and it's coming back and doing like 2 damage to us. The Geodude is pretty darn consistent though. We always get through on 20-some HP. And then, yeah, like we like a Bind Miss, we like Screech, we like Tackle. We don't like... I mean, Bind's not so bad. Bind is much worse. I mean, but once it uses Bide, like, there's nothing that we can do, because we're always gonna be, like, hitting it just after it used Bide, unless we get really lucky and use Defense Curl instead, but, yeah. This one's a pretty tough out, honestly. Okay. Let's go ahead and start with some Defense Curls. Okay, there we can hit it. Okay, we can have 3-turn Bide. Like, just to be clear, I'm not saying that this battle is impossible, it's just that it takes insane luck to get through this one, it seems like, because here against Geodude, like, it all just comes down to how many crits we get, and just, I mean, we just spam Tackle, there's nothing else to do here against Geodude. It's not like using Defense Curl a bunch of times is going to help us here all that much, because basically when we're here against Onix and it's using Bide, well, Bide doesn't rely on our defense, you know, for how much damage it does anyway. So it really then just comes down to, okay, how much damage can we do when we hit it? And the fact that we're basically stuck doing 1 damage per hit, like, we really need it to not use Bind, and there we go down. So with that there, I think we're gonna say that Geodude is, or sorry, Golem rather, is now out. So the Geodude line has failed, ultimately, against Brock. So we completed today's challenge with 9 Pokemon out of a starting set of 17 Pokemon. Actually, we went a little over today. Given that we had the Geodude line, I wanted to see if it would work. I think the most shocking one was the fact that Alakazam was not able to get through Brock on minimum battles because it only started with Kinesis and Teleport, which is incredibly ridiculous. I can't believe that the developers set this game to operate that way. I'm pretty sure in Red and Blue it would have been a different story, but in Yellow version, Alakazam is out. We've also seen the entire Geodude line go out. So I hope that you enjoyed today's content. We are now about halfway through all of the Pokemon in Generation 1. We will be coming back again next week with a new challenge. This time, we'll be starting with Rapidash and Ponyta, Slowpoke and Slowbro, Magnemite, Magneton, Farfetch'd, Doduo, Dodrio, Seal, Dugong, Grimer, Muck, and then Shelder and Cloyster to round us out. Those will be our Pokemon for next week. I think we've got some interesting ones. The Rapidash is definitely going to have a chance. We've already seen fire types. Even though Brock resists fire, it's not really that big of an issue. If we look back at some of the Pokemon that have successfully beaten Brock so far, I mean, we have a ton of fire types here. We've got Charmeleon, Charizard. We were able to get through with Ninetales, get through with Arcanine. So definitely evolved Pokemon with fire type moves seem to be able to get through pretty consistently. Then when we look at Slowpoke and Slowbro, Confusion. Confusion and or water type moves are going to be fantastic against Brock. And if I recall correctly, Slowpoke starts with Confusion, I think. That's something to double check. If it starts with Tackle, then it's definitely not getting through. But if it starts with Confusion, which I think I remember from all my playthroughs, then I think it's going to have an easy time. They're bulky Pokemon, and yeah, they would have that benefit. Magnemite, I believe, only starts off with Tackle. So Magnemite's going to be done pretty early on. But Magneton, it depends on its moveset. If it gets Sonic Boom, like we saw with Electrode, then suddenly, if we get Sonic Boom, like we would get on Electrode or get on Voltorb, then suddenly that could be reasonable to get through, because a guaranteed damage move is always going to crush Brock. So moves like Sonic Boom, moves like Dragon Rage, absolutely crush in the early game. When we get to Farfetch'd, Doduo, and Dodrio, we've already seen that the pure flying types seem to struggle a lot here. We were able to get through with Pidgeotto and Pidgeot using Sand Attack strategies, and they were at high enough levels to make it work. But these Pokemon don't get that benefit, so I think that they're going to struggle pretty mightily. Seal and Dugong. Depends on the moveset. I believe Seal starts with Headbutt, which is not going to be great, but Dugong will just have to see what it starts out with. Grimer and Muck are another couple Pokemon that I'm not so sure about. Grimer, probably no. It's going to know like Pound and Disable early on in the game. We've seen similar combinations, for example, with Wigglytuff, and it just wasn't able to get through Brock, even using Disable. I mean, you use Disable on the Geodude, and it just uses Struggle after that. And it doesn't last very many turns. It's very inconsistent to get off. The Muck, however, it depends on its moveset. If it has something like Minimize, it might be able to get through. Then finally, looking at our Shelder and Cloyster. Shelder, I'm not very confident in. It's going to start off with like Tackle and Withdraw, neither of which are really going to do all that much against Brock. But the Cloyster could start off with an Ice type move or a Water type move. If it gets something like Clamp or gets something like Aurora Beam to start off with, given that it is a stone evolution, I think it's going to absolutely crush. So those are our Pokemon for next week. They're going to be very interesting to see how they all work out. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. You can leave comments down below on what you think of the playthrough. Do you think we should have done something differently? Do you think that I missed a strategy that would have worked against one of the Pokemon? Let me know. We've had 3 Pokemon so far that I think are really on the cusp and depend on luck. Butterfree, Bulbasaur, and then we saw in last week's episode Vulpix, where Vulpix I was able to do a run off camera, off line that I was able to get through, but it required a very specific set of luck. It required getting burns on the first 2 turns in a row against the Geodude, and then getting burns also on the Onix in order to lower their attack enough that it could get through. It was ultimately possible, but not possible within the challenge rules, which is why it was eliminated. But perhaps we have missed something like that. So if you see a good strategy, let us know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week with the next set of Pokemon. Have a good day. See you next time.